There are moments when the pain feels so heavy that continuing seems impossible, and it's often at that exact point, when you believe you can't take another step, that everything has the potential to change. Have you ever felt like quitting? Truly quitting. Waking up in the morning and thinking, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Maybe you're trying to support your family. Maybe you're building something from the ground up. Maybe you're exhausted from giving your best and seeing nothing change. And then there's that voice inside that whispers, just stop. It's not worth the effort. This life isn't meant for you. But today I want to share something that might shift everything for you. In Japan, there is a word, one word, that has helped many people rise from complete despair. A word that gave people the strength to rebuild an entire nation from ruins. A word that turns pain into direction, struggle into meaning, and hardship into purpose. This word is Gambaru, and before you assume it's just another Japanese concept, give this a moment. I want to share the story of a young man, an ordinary individual living in rural Japan shortly after World War II. He had no money, very little to eat, and no real opportunities ahead of him. He had almost nothing, but he held on to something that many people tend to abandon the moment life becomes difficult. And that one thing changed the entire course of his life. Before I share his story, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. Tell me, what is your biggest struggle right now? What situation is making you feel like quitting? I do my best to read and reply to as many comments as I can, and I want you to know that you're not going through this alone. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Now let's continue. Chapter 1. Kenji's Story, Japan, 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II. The country was in ruins. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble. The economy was in collapse. Millions had died, and those who survived were left facing hunger and uncertainty. Many families were barely managing to get through each day. Amid all this, there was a 19-year-old named Kenji. He lived in a small countryside village, far from major cities and far from any real assistance. He lived with his mother, his 2 younger brothers, and his grandmother. His father had been killed in the war. Now the responsibility of the household fell on Kenji. But how do you become the provider when you have almost nothing? No food, no savings, no support. Every morning Kenji woke up with an empty stomach and a heavy sense of responsibility. He saw his mother trying not to cry. He saw his younger brothers asking for food he could not give. And the hardest part was the feeling that he was letting them down. I should be able to support them, he thought. But I can't, I'm not strong enough. Kenji was disciplined. He woke early every day. He worked in the fields. He accepted any extra work he could find. He put in effort wherever possible. But despite everything he did, it still wasn't enough. Reality was harsh and hope was fading. One day Kenji reached his limit. It was early morning, the air was cold. He had gone out to look for work at a nearby farm, but when he arrived, the farmer looked at him and said, I can't offer you anything. I'm struggling to pay the workers I already have. Kenji walked back home with nothing. He sat on the ground at the entrance of the house. He looked at the cloudy sky and began to cry, not just from sadness, but from the feeling of complete defeat. I can't do this anymore, he whispered. I've tried. I really have. But I can't, there's no solution. He sat there quietly, unsure of what to do next. Then someone approached. An older man, wearing simple clothing, hands rough from work. He stopped near Kenji and asked, Are you all right, young man? Kenji quickly wiped his face. Yes, I'm just tired. The man gave a small, knowing smile, the kind that suggests experience. Tired or giving up? Kenji didn't answer. Are you looking for work? The man asked. I am, but no one is hiring, Kenji replied. I am, the man said. Kenji looked up, a mix of hope and caution in his eyes. Hiring? For what? I run a small carpentry shop in the next town. I need someone to help. I can't pay much, but it's honest work and there's food. A small spark lit inside Kenji. It was faint but real. I accept, sir. I'll take anything, he said. The old man extended his hand. My name is Tita. You start tomorrow. The next morning, Kenji arrived early at Tita's workshop. It was a modest space with simple, well-used tools and the scent of fresh wood in the air. Tita worked quietly. Good morning, Mr. Tita. Good morning, Kenji. Ready to work? Yes, sir. And so it began. The first days were tough. Kenji had no experience with carpentry. His hands bled, his muscles ached, yet he said nothing. He needed this job. Tada watched carefully, silently observing every movement. After a week, as they shared a simple cup of tea at the end of the day, Tada said something that would stay with Kenji forever. "Kenji, do you know what Gambaru means?" Kenji shook his head. "No, sir." "Gambaru is an old word," Tada explained. "It means to persist, to give your best, and to never give up, even when everything feels impossible." Kenji listened, but the meaning didn't fully sink in. Tada continued, "You know, Kenji, after the war, many people lost everything. I did too, my home, my family, my work. I was left with nothing." Kenji looked at him surprised. "But I chose Gambaru. I chose to keep going. One day at a time, one plank at a time, one tool at a time. And look where I am now. It's not much, but it's mine, and I built it with my own hands." "But sir, what about the moments when you feel like you can't go on?" Tada smiled. "That's exactly when Gambaru matters most. It's in those moments of pain, Kenji, that we grow. Not in comfort, but in struggle." Chapter 2. The transformation slowly, Kenji began to understand. It didn't happen overnight. It happened gradually, day by day. There were mornings he woke exhausted, hands raw, muscles aching, but he remembered Gambaru. There were days when the work felt repetitive, even boring. Still, he remembered Gambaru. There were times he wanted to give up and go home, but he remembered Gambaru. And do you know what happened? He began to improve. His hands stopped bleeding and grew calloused. His movements became precise. He learned to understand wood, respect it, and create with purpose. Most importantly, he began to believe again. Not a blind belief, but a quiet, growing faith in his own effort, in the idea that persistence could change everything. It was a belief built slowly, brick by brick, day by day. Tada watched quietly and smiled. "You're learning, Kenji. This isn't just about carpentry. You're learning about yourself." Then came the real test. 6 months later, Tada fell ill. Nothing serious, but he needed to rest for a few weeks. Turning to Kenji, he said, "The shop is yours now. Can you handle it?" Fear returned to Kenji. "Mr. Tada, I don't know if I can." "You can. I wouldn't have given you this responsibility if I didn't believe in you." And just like that, Kenji was alone. Suddenly he was in charge of orders, customers, quality, everything. The pressure was immense. One day he received a particularly difficult request. An important client needed a large, complex table. Kenji worked day and night. He sweated, made mistakes, corrected them, and sometimes made more mistakes. One morning, staring at the half-finished table, doubt took over. "I'm not going to make it. I'll disappoint Mr. Tada. I'll lose this client. I'll lose everything." He sank to the floor, head down. Then he remembered Tada's words. "It's in pain, Kenji, that we grow." He took a deep breath, stood up, and continued. Kenji finished the table. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, made with care, with dedication, with Gambaru. The customer came to pick up the table. He ran his hand along the wood, tested its strength, and smiled. "This is a masterpiece. Who made this?" Kenji shyly said, "Me, sir." "You? But you're so young." "Congratulations. I'll recommend your work to everyone I know." After the customer left, Kenji stayed alone in the workshop. For the second time in his life he cried, but this time it wasn't a cry of defeat. It was a cry of triumph. Tada returned, fully recovered, and saw what Kenji had accomplished. "You did it, kid." "I did it, sir. Because of you. Because of Gambaru." Tada placed a hand on Kenji's shoulder. "It wasn't because of me. I only showed you the way. You were the one who walked it." Over time, Kenji earned more. The workshop grew. He could provide more food, a better life for his mother, siblings, and grandmother. He didn't get rich, but he had gained something far greater than money: dignity, purpose, and the certainty that no matter what came, he could face it, because he had Gambaru. Chapter 3. The Science Behind Gambaru. Now you might be thinking, nice story, but does this work in real life? It does, and science supports it. Research shows that the ability to persist through adversity is linked to what psychologists call a growth mindset. People with this mindset believe their abilities can improve through effort and practice. The result? They overcome challenges that others consider impossible. A neuroscientist explained in a recent study, "When we face difficulties and choose to persist, our brains form new neural connections. We literally become mentally stronger. In other words, pain isn't the end. Pain is the beginning of transformation. But there is one important detail. Not all persistence leads to progress. Some people keep pushing the same way without changing their approach. They repeat the same actions expecting a different result and end up frustrated. Gambaru is not about being stubborn. It's about resilience. It's about adapting. It's about moving forward with clarity. Yes, you persist, but you do so with intention and intelligence. And you always remember your reason for continuing. Chapter 4. Your Gambaru moment now. Think about your own life. What are you facing right now? Maybe you're working to support your family. Maybe you're building a business. Maybe you're studying for a new career. Maybe you're simply trying to get through each day. And it's difficult. I understand. There are days when you feel like you can't continue. Days when the effort feels pointless. When the results don't appear. When others don't see your effort. When giving up feels easier. But I want you to remember Kenji, a 19-year-old with nothing. No security, no resources, no guarantees. Yet he didn't stop. Because he realized something essential. Pain is part of growth. There is no change without challenge. There is no progress without discomfort. When you stop running from the struggle and instead learn to use it as energy, everything shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is defeated by circumstances, and you become someone who takes responsibility and moves forward. Gambaru does not mean being superhuman. It does not mean never feeling fear, exhaustion, or doubt. It's about feeling all of this and continuing anyway. It's about waking up the next day, even when yesterday was terrible. It's about taking one more step even when your legs are trembling. It's about believing that in the end it will be worth it. And you know what? It always is. Not always in the way you imagine, not always at the time you want, but it's worth it, because the person you become along the way matters far more than the final outcome. Kenji didn't become a millionaire. He didn't become famous, but he saved his family. He became a man of character. He left a legacy. And you, what legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to be remembered as someone who gave up at the first obstacle? Or as someone who, despite everything, kept going? Here's one last truth to rethink everything. Do you know how many times Kenji thought about giving up before he met Tada? Every day. And afterward? Also every day. The difference wasn't that the urge to quit disappeared. The difference was that he learned to keep moving forward despite it. That's the reality no one tells you about success, fulfillment, or purpose. It's not about never being afraid, it's about being afraid and acting anyway. It's not about avoiding pain, it's about feeling it and transforming it into strength. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about making the best of the moment you have. So when you're at your limit, when everything feels impossible, and you think you can't face another day, remember Gambaru, remember Kenji, a simple boy with nothing yet who had something no one could take from him, the choice not to give up. That choice changed everything. Your life can change too. Not tomorrow, not next week, but it will if you choose Gambaru. If you choose to persist, if you choose to turn pain into strength. Because in the end, it's not about how many times you fall. It's about how many times you rise. If this video inspired you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, because I will continue bringing content that adds value. Leave a like and comment below, Gambaru. That's it, just that word. Because when you write it, you're making a promise to yourself. A promise not to give up. And one more thing. If you enjoy content on psychology and philosophy, I invite you to check out my new channel as well. I'll leave the link in the video description. If you've watched this far, thank you for your time and attention. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, your story is still being written and it doesn't end with giving up.